everyone, my name is Elaine, and today I'm going to be both summarizing and reviewing Terry Pratchett's 7th Discworld novel, Pyramids. I'm going to start with the summary, Part 1, The Book of Going Forth. The pyramids in the ancient valley of the Gel flare, their power into the night. That's on page 4. High Priest Dios awakens. The words for the invocation of the new sun fill his mind. Tepik, an assassin with the guild in Ankh-Morpork, examines himself in a mirror and suits up. He falls over when he finishes getting ready. It's summertime, and Ankh-Morpork is uncharacteristically hot, even at night. Tepik knows this is the night. He wonders who it'll be before he slips out the window. It's midnight. Tepik sneaks along a parapet 4 stories above Filigree Street. He notices a silhouette and hurtles a throwing knife at it. According to rumor, if he kills his examiner prior to the test, he will pass automatically. If he fails, he's bound to be killed. Marisette appears and begins Tepik's examination. He asks Tepik several questions related to the assassin's profession. When he is finished, he gives Tepik an envelope containing a guild bond for 10,000 Ankh-Morpork dollars. Marisette tells Tepik to meet him in a room under a gong tower on the Street of Bookkeepers. Marisette disappears. Tepik begins to make his way over. He doesn't notice that someone had removed a plank bridge he intended to use before he jumped. His life begins to flash before his eyes. Tepik remembers the day he left home. His life as the son of King Tepikimon the 27th of Gel Baby. He recalls the peculiar care package his father had given him before he left for the Assassin's Guild. It contained things like a rather aged sardine. As Tepik inches closer and closer to death, the ground being roughly 80 feet away and closing, his senses sharpen. Tepik recalls when he arrived at the school, the senior students he saw, and how he aspired to be like them. Tepik manages to grab a ledge. He swings around, smacks into a wall, and slides down its face. Tepik remembers when he met Grunworth Navor, his housemaster at Viper House, and the essay he was asked to write. How he met Chitter, another student, shortly thereafter. Tepik catches himself and continues on his way. Chitter and Tepik discuss their families. Tepik explains that his father is a pharaoh. He thinks his mother was a concubine. She was eaten by a crocodile during a midnight swim. Chitter explains that his father is in commerce and begins to show Tepik around. Tepik talks about the pyramids and explains that the whole kingdom's in debt. I mean, even our debts are in debt. That's why I'm here, really. Someone in our house needs to earn some money. A royal prince can't hang around looking ornamental anymore. He's got to get out and do something useful in the community. That's on page 28. Tepik finds Marisette sitting by a trapdoor. The plank bridge is nearby. Marisette gives Tepik permission to proceed. Tepik recounts his first night in his dormitory. Arthur, a mama's boy and fellow student, is kept from sacrificing a goat by Cheesewright, who throws a pillow at him. Chitter steps in to defend Arthur and his religion. Tepik comforts Arthur and explains that his father, the pharaoh, is his god. Arthur tells Tepik about his religion. Arthur is a strict, organized Ormit. Tepik agrees to ask his father to protect Arthur from Great Orm's wrath. Chitter finishes teaching Cheesewright a lesson. Tepik continues on his way to the gong tower after collecting some poison needles from a drain pipe. Tepik makes it into a room with his examiner. There's also someone lying in a bed covered with a blanket. Tepik prepares to shoot the figure with a crossbow bolt. Tepik also knows he doesn't have the heart to actually kill someone. Tepik decides, definitively, that he cannot shoot and that he will fail the exam with flair. Tepik shoots the bolt off to the right. It bounces around the room for a bit before it hits the blanket. Marisette informs Tepik that he has passed the exam. Tepik's shocked. He examines his test paper, which Marisette left behind, and confirms that he has passed. Tepik makes his way over to the bed and lifts the blanket. Chitter and Tepik catch up after the exam. They've both passed, and the body was only a dummy. The boys discover that Arthur has passed his exam too, but not Cheesewright. Chitter, Arthur, and Tepik go out to celebrate. Tepik's father leaps to his death. He feared he had failed to make the sun come up, as is his duty. He feels foolish when he realizes his mistake. The boys walk through Ankh-Morpork drunk and are attacked by thieves. Tepik notices a tiny dot in the center of the sun as he prepares to do something. Death comes for the king, but doesn't collect him. He has to stick around while he's mummified, and a pyramid is built for him. Several servants realize that their king is dead now, that he has hurled himself off a 100-foot wall and landed on his head. Surprising! The thieves are scared away by Arthur and the seagull that lands on Tepik's arm. The group notices that the Ankh is rising. Dios, both high priest and minister, takes up ruling the kingdom now that the king is dead. The late king is being mummified and such, but his son has not been informed of his death because Dios feels he'll know. Dios gets the impression the new king will be trouble. Tepik isn't quite himself and has to be guided back to the guild by his friends. They realize that he made cornstalk sprout out of freshly baked bread and grass and greenery sprout out of wherever he sets his feet. Chitter and Arthur lift Tepik up and shepherd him back to the San. The doctor announces that Tepik is dead even though he's still breathing. Tepik says he's got to get home because the kingdom wants him. He thinks his father is dead. Tepik arrives back at home. He knows he is never going to leave again. Part 2. The Book of the Dead. 2 weeks pass. Dios informs Tepek that he needs to get married. He suggests the boy's aunt. Tepek is appalled. He doesn't want to marry his aunt. Dios isn't looking forward to teaching Tepek and making him into a proper ruler. The embalmers finish their work on Tepekimon the 27th's body. Tepek goes to see it and promises that he'll make his father a grand pyramid. But the late king doesn't want one, keeps shouting that he's not interested and that the kingdom can't afford it. But the ghost's words fall on deaf ears. Dios supports Tepek's plan, and yet Tepek gets the impression that his father isn't happy about his plan. Tepek suggests to both Dios and Toklops, the architect who designs pyramids, that they bury his father at sea. He thinks that his father had mentioned wanting that once. Dios shuts him down. Tepek orders a grand pyramid to be built for his father, the grandest ever. Dios wants it to be completed within 3 months or the architect will be punished. Construction is to begin immediately. The architect runs off to do as he is bid. Dios looks ill. Both he and Tepek know they can't afford the pyramid. The architect speaks about the pyramid job with his twin sons, Toklops 2A and 2B. Toklops doesn't expect to be paid. You don't expect real royalty to pay its way. That's one of the signs of real royalty, not having any money. That's on page 110. Father and sons realize that the job will bankrupt them. Toklops decides to go through with it anyway. Anyone who disagrees will be cast out. The pyramids lining the Valley of the Gel begin to flare during the night, a solid ribbon of fire, 115. Tepek decides that he is going to make some changes. He intends to introduce indoor plumbing, proper beds and pillows, and more to his kingdom. The late king learns about the nature of the pyramid being constructed for him. He groans. Tepek wonders why his feather bed hasn't arrived, or the individual he called about the plumbing. Dios thinks it must be pirates or bandits or something. Toklops and one of his sons realizes that a negative node has formed in the pyramid. The son notes that more will form. The son explains that they can expect temporal anomalies and suggests that they get the men away from the pyramid. They enter an expanding loop. Toklops thinks about how he can use this information to his advantage. Tepek listens to and passes judgment on several cases. Dios twists his words. The final case belongs to Tracy, one of the late king's servants. Tracy insists that Tepek's father didn't want to be buried in a pyramid and refuses to take poison so she can be his servant in the netherworld. Tepek realizes there's something familiar about her and declares that she will be set free. Dios announces that she's to be executed the following day. Tepek rescues Tracy from prison. She explains that his father hated pyramids because they nailed the kingdom to the past. That's on page 153. Tepek urges Tracy to hide in a mummy case. She does. Tepek's father watches him depart. There is a sound. The pyramid flares collapse. Dios informs Tepek that the palace is being searched for the escaped Tracy and that the pyramid will be capped tomorrow. Tepek announces that he wishes to visit his father. Dios plans to accompany him. Dios and some guards search some mummy cases while out with Tepek. They don't find Tracy. Toklos speaks to his sons. Their workers keep looping themselves, adding to the family's impending bankruptcy, but they find a way around it by looping coins. The original pyramid builders knew the whole point of a correctly built pyramid was to achieve absolute null time in the central chamber, so that a dying king tucked up there would indeed live forever, or at least never actually die. The time that should have passed in the chamber was stored in the bulk of the pyramid and allowed to flare off once every 24 hours. The ancients were far too wise to build very big pyramids. They could cause very strange things that would make mere fluctuations in time look tiny by comparison. That's on 173. Tepek sneaks out to find Tracy. The old king is glad because she's Tepek's half-sister. The pair slip away together. Toklos' sons realize that they need to cap the pyramid. Their workers have fled and it's interfering with the others. The brothers prepare to fix the problem themselves. Dios and his guards capture Tepek, who is dressed as an assassin, and Tracy in a camel stall. Dios sentences them both to death. He believes that Tepek killed the king despite the boys' protests. The brothers realize the creaking is coming from within the pyramid, and a sound as loud as the groaning of continents. That's on 188. Tepek and Tracy flee on a camel. Tepek can see that there's something wrong with the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid screams, rises, affects the fabric of time and space. Tepek notices the valley is no longer there. Dill, the master embalmer, awakens and notices the pyramids are no longer flaring. He awakens his apprentice. They are discomfited by the presence of their gods in the sky. Dill decides that they should head to the palace. Part 3. The Book of the New Sun. Tepek thinks he's found a smaller version of his kingdom in the sand. He wants to get it back. He has no interest in a lost kingdom. He decides to travel with the camel and Tracy to Phoebe, where they know about geometry. Toklos moves through the rubble at the base of the pyramid. He realizes that the capstone has been destroyed. He finds his son, 2B, who explains that the pyramid twisted while he and his brother were trying to fix it. 2A is moving. His father thinks something quantum has happened to him and wants his brother to come see. 2B explains that his brother is dimensionally maladjusted on page 216. He's also flat and unable to communicate with them. The travelers meet Zeno and Ebid, a pair of Ephebian philosophers running tests in the desert. Dios and the kingdom's priests meet to discuss what is going on. Dios says that the king is dead and he has no successor. Kumi turns to Dios to lead them. Zeno explains that Tepic needs to speak with Thaganol. Furthermore, now that the Old Kingdom has disappeared and Ephebe's border is concurrent with that of Sort, the philosophers fear that war will break out between both nations. That's on 237. Eben invites Tepic to a symposium. Tracy can't come because she's female. Tepikimon the 27th rises, newly undead, and begins to put himself back together. Dale informs him that everything their people believe is coming true, the sun and gods, that the gods aren't right. They're here and shouting and fighting and walking around. Dill is convinced they're not very smart. Dill explains that the priests aren't doing much, just throwing each other into the river, and that the roads out of the city are currently leading back in. The Old Kingdom and his people are trapped with their gods. Dill informs the Old King that his son has perished. He commits suicide before fleeing. The Old King isn't worried. They decide and begin to plan to do something about everything that's going on. Tepic attends the symposium. He discovers that the Ephebian tyrant has declared war on Sort. Tepic speaks to Thaganol. The geometrician isn't surprised about what happened in the Old Kingdom. Building larger and larger pyramids was bound to cause a problem, eventually. He explains that pyramids suck time up before flaring off. In other words, the people of the Old Kingdom are burning off time. Thaganol also explains that the Great Pyramid probably moved the dimensions around by 90 degrees on 254. Tracy wants to sail away. Tepic wants to return home. While they're debating, they run into Chitter. Toklas declares that he and his sons will build pyramids no longer. Chitter invites Tepic and Tracy for a meal and provides them with new clothes. Tepic and Chitter catch each other up. Chitter invites Tepic to join his family's business. Tepic falls asleep and awakens to find the boat moving. He dives over the rail. Tepic retrieves his camel, you bastard, and prepares to make the return trip home. Tepikimon the 27th, Dill, and his new assistant, Gurn, wake the late king's grandmother. After freeing her from her pyramid, they begin to free several more rulers from their tombs. Tepic rides back to where his home should be. The Sordian and Ephebian armies are already there. Tepic denies you bastard water and uses him to lead him home, since he knows the camel can sense the river the Old Kingdom is built around. After Tepic disappears, the rival armies prepare for battle. Part 4. The Book of 101 Things a Boy Can Do. Tepic notices the Old Kingdom shrouded by mists. You bastard had walked into a side dimension. Tepic is given a riddle by a sphinx and dismantles it before riding away. The priests are upset the gods won't listen to them. Kumi turns to Dios for guidance. It is decided that Dios will intercede with the gods on behalf of the kingdom in the king's absence. Dios still claims Tepic is dead. Dios begins to make a final request prior to his departure. He is cut off by the sight of the risen kings and queens. The embalmers and gathered undead prepare to free the first, Cuffed, but notice that his pyramid seal is already open. The embalmers and the late king go to investigate. They find that the pyramid's internal workings differ from more modern pyramids that someone has been counting all over the place. Dill notices and points out that their torch is burning backwards. Tepic returns to the Old Kingdom. He knows he has to kill the pyramid. Tepic heads to the palace. He finds it empty until he reaches the balcony where people are watching boats head across the river. Vegetation sprouts from his feet. The gathered throng bows to him. A guard informs him that the dead are walking and that the priests have taken all of the boats on page 310. The crowd seems to expect him to know what to do. He parts the river and heads to the opposite bank. The mummified ancestors play a rather loud game of telephone as they translate an inscription found in one of the pyramids. The late king explodes at the name of the first. On his way to the Great Pyramid, Tepic notices armies of the undead. The armies of Sort and Ephebi each begin to construct a wooden horse. Topclasps and 2B watch Kumi lead the priests toward the undead. The Ephebian sergeant explains to one of his soldiers how the wooden horse should work. Tepic commands Topclasps and 2B to shut the pyramid down. They can't. The group discusses the capstone, how it needs to be made of foil or electrum so it won't wear down as it flares off. Tepic seems to devise a plan involving steel in a single flare. The priests observe the mummified kings destroying the pyramids. Kumi tries to banish them. It doesn't work. Dios is pushed forward. He had been around for a very long time, through the ages and line of kings, and has forgotten much, including his family. But the history of the kingdom is meant to be inside his head. The kings want to destroy the pyramids. Dios can't allow it. It will destroy the kingdom. Lightning crackles from Dios's staff. A knife is wedged between two black marble slabs. The pyramid pulses beneath Tepic as he continues his climb and surveys the world around him. Dios prepares to stop Tepic because he fears the effects his actions will have on the Old Kingdom. The others are worried about Dios taking action against their king. Tepic begins to notice the return of the gods to the pyramid. They look angry. Dios tries to stop the gods he created from destroying the kingdom he forged with words. The ancestors notice Tepic faltering and know what they must do. The ancestors help Tepic up the pyramid. Toklas and 2B flee. The gods creep closer. Dios has disappeared. The ancestors depart on their own errand. The gods turn their attention to Tepic. The pyramids along the gel begin to flare. Everyone near the pyramid flees. A god attacks Tepic. The Great Pyramid flares. A firestorm descends upon the land. The Great Pyramid rises and turns 90 90 degrees. Then it explodes, damaging several smaller pyramids. The boom that echoes across the land is great. Tallclosp and 2B come across Dill. They happen upon an unconscious Tepik who knows he still has one more thing to do. The sun rises. The impending Sordian and Ephebian battle seems to have come to a standstill. The river valley reappears. Several of the pyramids lie smoking, their caps having been blown off. The ancestors had disappeared. A ship rolls in outside the palace. Tepik is back on the throne. The old kingdom is rebuilding. The gods have disappeared. Chitter delivers Tracy to Tepik in a carpet. Tepik plans to abdicate and find someone else to rule. He and Tracy discuss how they've both had the dream about cows. The priests inform Tracy and Tepik that they're brother and sister. Tepik gives Tracy the throne before running away. Kumi is made high priest since Dios was never found. Tracy dispenses with several traditions. She seems rather disinterested. Kumi is told to inform both the Sordians and the Ephebians that they may cross their lands, and Chitter is supposed to be brought to her to discuss free ports. 2A has returned to normal. Tallclosp and his sons discuss the construction of a bridge for the queen. Dill and Gurn begin their new lives in the palace kitchen. There will be no more pyramids or mummies as the old kingdom modernizes. Death comes to collect the ancestors. Tepik ignores Tracy's summons and leaves the city. Tracy comes after him. She needs him. Tepik is convinced she'll be fine without him. The pair come to a decision. Dios awakens and goes forth, and that's the end of the book. Now for my book review. Early on, the novel passes between the present day and several of Tepik's memories. There is no mention of how much time has passed between each episode. Although it's easy to tell what is taking place in the present and what is taking place in the past, it would have been nice to have been provided with how much time has passed. It would make it easier to keep track of everything and allow readers to see both how quickly events unfold and how quickly Tepik is progressing. The names made the book somewhat hard to follow. It would have helped if they were simpler or not recycled, as was the case with Tallclosp and his family. This problem was also exacerbated by the blander nature of the supporting cast members. If their personalities had been more distinctive, I think it would have been easier not to blend those with similar names together, as was the case with Tallclosp and his sons. I really didn't get the difference between the sons, especially 2A and 2B. I know one's an architect and the other is an engineer, but that's basically it, and I couldn't tell you which one was which without looking it up, and I feel like that's a problem. To be honest, I felt like the main characters were pretty bland too. Like, they were kind of just there to carry out a story. I think they had some distinct traits, like Tepik appreciating the freedom to do what he wants, or basically freedom of movement, but they didn't leave much of an impression on me. I would have liked to see some traits that made them more distinctive and compelling as characters, as opposed to what felt like a means to an end. I also like the fact that the book was pretty fast-paced, there was always something going on, and that it had a lot of funny moments. So overall, I think it was a good read. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So there you have it. That is my summary and review of Terry Pratchett's Pyramids. If you like what you saw here today, please give me a thumbs up. I always appreciate those. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of this video. Let me know what you think of pyramids. I always like to know what you guys think. And don't forget, if you haven't already, to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell so you know what's up, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye, guys.